I'd like to take you back for a moment, if I could, to 2016. It was 10 years ago. I was 20. I was looking at a lot of political stuff because the girl I was dating was very into political stuff, very excited as a black woman. And I was just enjoying what she was talking about. She was saying, man, politics is getting crazy. Things are going nuts. So I said, okay, I guess I'll get into politics. And I had not watched the news basically ever besides my dad actively, retroactively seeing it, and I would actively see it side to him. But I didn't really watch the news. Wasn't something that really tickled my fancy. But things got really fancy when I saw this clip on Fox News. I saw this clip on Fox News first, but more so this clip made me get into politics really heavily.
Right into our camera to deliver this message to Donald Trump.
Donald, you're a sniveling coward, and leave Heidi the hell alone.
The Texas senator wasn't done there, firing back after Trump retweeted this image. Cruz's wife in an unflattering pose next to Melania Trump.
It is not acceptable for a big, loud New York bully to attack my wife.
The feud started when an anti-Trump super PAC released this digital ad showing a nude photo of Trump's wife from an old photo shoot that we had to blur. The banner reading, "Meet Melania Trump, your next first lady."
It was framed in such a way like it was really a terrible thing, and it was sent to a certain group, and I thought it was disgraceful. And Ted Cruz knew about it.
Trump taking to Twitter, "Be careful, lying Ted, or I will spill the beans on your wife." And tonight, still standing by that cryptic threat.
I wrote, I said, be careful, because otherwise I'll have to start talking about, your situation.
Cruz maintaining he had nothing to do with the original ad, calling it completely inappropriate. And today, Trump's old foe, Fox News' Megyn Kelly, weighing in on Trump's latest counterpunch, tweeting, "Seriously?" Cruz today describing Kelly as exactly the kind of woman that Trump is threatened by.
Donald doesn't like strong women. Strong women scare Donald.
And David, tonight the Trump campaign is responding. Trump's campaign manager saying this about Senator Cruz. This is his effort to gain attention, to try and stay relevant in a race that he has lost.
There was so much information there. Didn't know Donald Trump was dating somebody like that at all. Didn't know he was married to Melania. I had no clue about any of these people. I just thought it was fun to watch white people fight each other, and I thought it was really cool. And at that moment, I think I had decided that I was going to vote for Donald Trump. I don't think anything else really centered my decision. I just said, man, this guy seems like an a-hole. What? He just seems really messed up. I'm going to vote for. He made this guy look so mad. And I thought Ted Cruz, as a meme, as a bit, I thought Ted Cruz was a Zodiac killer. So I didn't really take much credence in anything Ted Cruz was saying. I think the other person going against Donald Trump was Hillary Clinton. And only thing I knew about Hillary Clinton was that everybody kept telling me that she was evil and that Bill Clinton was still with her. And I knew Bill Clinton got head from the girl in the Oval Office, Monica Lewinsky. So that's kind of all I knew, right? That's it. And so Donald Trump just starts saying crazier stuff. He just starts saying insane things after that. He just starts saying things that made me giggle and chortle every time he says something. It was so funny to watch Donald Trump go on the most insane tirade I've ever seen in my entire life. He said this about black people.
No group in America has been more harmed by Hillary Clinton's policies than African Americans. No group. No group. If Hillary Clinton's goal was to inflict pain on the African American community, she could not have done a better job. It's a disgrace. Tonight, I'm asking for the vote of every single African American citizen in this country who wants to see a better future. Look how much African American communities have suffered under Democratic control. To those I say the following: what do you have to lose by trying something new like Trump? What do you have to lose? I say it again, what do you have to lose? Look, what do you have to lose? You're living in poverty, your schools are no good, you have no jobs, 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose? America must reject the bigotry of Hillary Clinton, who sees communities of color only as votes, not as human beings worthy of a better future.
When I first heard that, I rallied behind Donald Trump indefinitely. I think I got like 3 of my other friends to vote for Donald Trump. And it was the first election I could actually vote in. It was literally the first election I could ever vote in. And I thought I had done enough research. I was watching a bunch of stuff. And I got like really deep into, like 10 years ago, I got really deep into, I guess, the right-wing pipeline. It was a bunch of white guys being cool with me, a bunch of black guys telling me to cut my hair. I never did. Didn't want to do that. It was really fun. Right, I thought it was really cool, and all that I ever kept seeing on the left side was, and they're murderers, and they're evil, and stuff like that. And all I kind of saw was white performative liberals saying, I love black people so much. I think what really set it off for me was somebody said to me, you know, this is really cool because you're black, right? And I hate white people because I hate myself, and I love dogs, and I love black people as much as I love dogs, and I don't. What an insane thing to say to me. Just a genuinely insane thing to say to me. So the reason I'm saying it like this is I want to get you into the mind frame of where I was when the second plane hit. Where I was when I voted for Donald Trump. That's really the important thing there. And I was pretty staunch about what it was and what was going on. And then I want you to recognize what immediately followed after Donald Trump got elected. It was pretty normal. He was inheriting Barack Obama's economy. And I was just thinking, oh, this is actually pretty good. You know, gas was a little bit cheap. I was paying pretty like 30 cents for eggs. Life was pretty good for me around that time. I didn't really have a big issue with anything. I think I was staying in Vegas at the time. And I was winning a bunch of money all the time. I was just winning a bunch of money. Not from gambling, just in general. Just getting a bunch of money. Life was great. I was selling illicit substances. And I was avoiding the cops. Life was really good for me back in the day around that time. So what people kept trying to do to me was get me with gotchas, right? And it was very interesting how people would come to me and say, oh, did you know Trump did this? And did you know Trump did that? And I said, yeah, I did actually. And it's pretty funny. That's pretty much it. There was no deeper thought or analysis from me back in the day. I was young. I was ignorant, like freshly 20. I'm just dumb. And then COVID happened. And all that I saw during COVID was one thing and one thing only. This was the gas during COVID. This is how much gas cost. And this is all I cared about, realistic, because I could directly see it. I could directly see that gas was cheap during COVID. I had no clue about anything else. Trump said gas was cheap, and gas was cheap. I pretty much believed everything that brother said because it was true. I didn't really have any reason to doubt him. And I was door dashing a lot. So I see this gas. I see this gas right here. Right here. You see on the screen. And I don't have any issue with anything Trump is doing. They would tell me Trump was misogynistic, he was racist, he was a pig, all this other stuff. And all I remember was that my friend had actually gotten approved for a small business loan during Trump for his election. And I was very happy about that. I was like, oh, my friend got approved for a small business loan. And that may have been a coincidence overall. I didn't really look into the policies, but my friend had been trying to get a small business loan for quite some time, wasn't able to, but then got a small business loan and was able to get their small business off the ground. And I didn't really know anything else. I believe it was while COVID was going on. I think it was May 25th, 2020. I believe around that range. George Floyd had died, right? George Floyd had passed away because of the cop kneeling on his neck. And I saw that, and I had seen so many situations like that before in Detroit. And I've seen so many situations like that before. I just thought it was regular. I didn't know it was going to cause all this nonsense, but people have been hauled up inside of their homes because of COVID. Things are going crazy. And then I remember seeing that a Democratic senator, he said, well, COVID may be bad, but you guys have got to go out and protest. You guys go ahead and protest because this is and this is just insane. We had been told not to leave our houses, and then we were just told we could leave our houses if it was for civil rights. And I was a little confused. Doesn't that mean you want us to die? And I want to put you in my mind where I was at that time. Donald Trump had said, you guys got to stay inside the house and you guys should probably get the vaccine. You can try other methods. Maybe you could try, I don't know, drinking bleach or eating hand sanitizer. Do whatever you want, but you got to stay inside. And you got to do what you want to. Thought it was a goofy little joke. Thought it was just a fun little joke. That was my thought process, right? And then I see that George Floyd died, which is a black man dying in America was such a common occurrence to me. But it got exploded because everybody was online. So everybody, all the social justice warriors, all the white performative liberals, they were out saying, this is I've never seen something like this in my entire life. I see something like this every day. So I've seen this regularly in Detroit. So I wasn't as radicalized by the George Floyd dying as I'd say a white liberal was, or maybe a younger black person, because I'm in like the worst city in America, right? I was just there. And Donald Trump had famously said,
and were they wrong?
Are they wrong?
I think they're wrong 100%. Sometimes they're wrong. They were wrong. Yeah. Sometimes they're wrong. It's the New York Times. They're always wrong. Well, I would say my wife tells me I'm wrong all the time.
So I just assumed everybody else was wrong because, I don't know, the leader of the free world was telling everybody they're wrong. I just assumed that was correct. I don't know why. I just kind of assumed because he had a suit, he was talking confident. I just kind of understood that the guy was smart. And then I started to go to college. I was in college. I was finishing up my last 2 years of college, and my professor had said, so you see what's going on. And I was online, and it was during COVID. I couldn't go into classes. And my professor had said, hey, did you see what's going on with the George Floyd stuff? And I said, yeah, it was on Blackboard. We're talking to each other. And I said, yeah, this is crazy. This is nuts. It's all these black people going out and destroying things. And he said, what? He was confused by me saying that. And I said, there's a bunch of black people going out and destroying things. Isn't that crazy? I was out at one of the protests because I wanted to get a free TV, and I took a free TV. And he said, no, this is a reasonable response to injustices that are going on in the black community. And there's a white guy. And I said, well, yeah, but you got to understand, this happens every day in the hood. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is every day. This is a regular occurrence for me. I see this every single day. And he said, you're from the hood? You don't sound like you're from the hood. Oh, a person from the hood is supposed to sound like they're from the hood. He said, no, you just don't have the, black vernacular. And even hearing that made me realize that I don't fit the stereotype of a black man in the hood. I didn't really fit any of the stereotypes. But I thought that it was the Democrats trying to kill black people. That was my thought process. Because they had told me to stay indoors, and that staying indoors is good, getting a vaccine is good. But in the same breath, they said, go out and protest because it's not that bad to be close to each other. I wasn't allowed to be 6 feet from somebody in Walmart, and then I'm told to be arm in arm, hand in hand with people. I could have gotten COVID. I could have died. I didn't want that. I was really horrified by this new disease, and I had a lot of paranoia going in. And this is before I even knew I had schizoaffective disorder or anything of that variety. I was just paranoid of everything, and what Trump said made sense. And I was listening to a bunch of other people, and I was even convincing people that that they were trying to kill black people. I got a bunch of black people to admit that, like, oh yeah, they are trying to kill black people. I think Trump is a good dude. He's funny. He's a cool dude. And the only thing I really cared about was how funny Trump was, right? So I'm seeing all this stuff. I'm seeing all these things. I'm seeing how good gas is. I'm seeing how cheap eggs are. And then I had spoken to my brother. Now, my brother is not a very, albeit wise man. At the time, he was about as smart as me, to be quite honest with you. He's 2 years older than me. And he said, and I remember this so adamantly, when Trump gets out of office, we're probably going to have one of the worst economies of all time. And I said, but it's so good now. And he said, no, that's because of COVID, and that's because of Obama, and he's piggybacking off of Obama. And my brother just loves all black people without a shadow of a doubt. And I said, why are you saying that? And he said, watch. So I did. I waited. And as Biden took office and Trump lost, and Trump was just saying even more insane things, but I thought it was really funny because he just kept saying crazier things. I had witnessed now the other side. I had witnessed reasonable Democrats. I had witnessed the horrors that Trump had done during his first term. Because I wasn't deeply into politics, I didn't understand how devastating all the stuff he was doing and why so many women didn't like Donald Trump because of all the derogatory things he had said. Now, as a previous criminal, I thought everybody was capable of change. I just assumed Donald Trump was capable of change, and I was very hopeful for what he was doing. But then I did like actual research because my brother sent me a lot more sources. And he basically just gave me a timeline of things. I'm going to show you the timeline right now. He withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He directs the U.S. Office of Trade Representatives to withdraw from the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This was a horrible thing for our trade deal. It was horrifying to do that. This was just strangely racist. It was a travel ban. As President Trump signs an executive order that denies entry into the United States for people from Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen, and suspends the refugee admissions. This was very horrifying for a lot of refugees and immigrants in general. I don't know why he was attacking a bunch of immigrants. I actually didn't even know that he ran on getting illegal immigrants out. I just heard him say that we're letting criminals into the country and that he's going to fix that. And he was very good on that promise. And I just kept seeing people say he kept good on his promises. This is the biggest one for me because the reversal on environmental protection, I really cared about the environment. And President Trump signed an executive order that rolls back the Obama administration's temporary ban on mining coal and protection rules for streams. Trump reverses much of Obama's clean power strategy, rolling back U.S. action to combat climate change. I didn't understand why he did this. I didn't even know he did this because I had just been getting fed propaganda. I could go through every little thing there, but the biggest thing that really got me was the January 6th nonsense. January 6th, 2021, this day when Donald Trump didn't get elected for office, a mob came outside of the U.S. Capitol and began to attack the U.S. Capitol. I had never seen something as volatile and ridiculous as this. I had no clue what this was about. And I remember Trump inciting this exact violence. And I remember a few people that I was hanging around at the time said, yeah, we got to go to the Capitol and storm it to change the vote because they rigged the election. And I said, they rigged the election? I didn't know they did that. It was wild. Everything about this was crazy. It was an attempt to overturn the presidential election. Everything was bad here. I was really horrified by everything. I was horrified by all of it. And even here on December 18th, Trump's called for supporters to attend a rally before the January 6th congressional vote count. It's a big protest in DC. Be there and will be wild. He just kind of told them to go ahead and still take the vote back. It was really crazy. And all that I kept seeing, right, in opposition to this was, oh yeah, but you guys marched for George Floyd. And I said, okay, I think this is a little different. I think this is wildly different than George. You can't really compare the two. And they said, why? Because they're black? And I think hearing that comparison, that's what clicked for me. That right there. No reasonable argument, no gotcha moment, nothing of that variety. It was relating it to black people that really said it for me. And seeing all the stuff over and over again, Donald Trump was insane. Donald Trump left office with the lowest approval rating in any president in U.S. history. There's this really good article about everything that changed during Donald Trump's presidency because I think that he definitely changed the entire bulk of how America is perceived and what happened with America overall. And as a former, I was like a diehard MAGA. I was like, make America great again. America should be great again. Because I wanted a nuclear family, right? I wanted to have all this stuff. I wanted to have a job where I had 2 vacations a year. I wanted good America. That's all I cared about because I loved America. And I'm a foreigner, by the way. I want to point this out. I was born in Egypt and I moved here. And when I was 8 years old, so I had heard all these great things about America, the land of opportunity, this beautiful place. So all I had thought in my entire brain and mind was, yeah, this is gonna be great. I love America. I love America. And I just thought Donald Trump was funny. I'm gonna read this article to help you out understand what Donald Trump did and make it easier for you. Donald Trump stunned the political world in 2016 when he became the first president without government or military experience ever to be elected president of the United States. This is a powerful statement to me because that told me that anybody could become president. His 4-year tenure in the White House revealed extraordinary figures in American society, but left little doubt that he's a figure unlike any other in the nation's history. Very divisive. Trump, the New York businessman and former reality TV show star, won the 2016 election after a campaign that defied norms and commanded public attention from the moment it began. His approach to governing was equally unconventional. Other presidents tried to unify a nation after turning from the campaign trail to unite the White House. From his first days in Washington to his last, Trump seemed to revel in the political fight. He used his presidential megaphone to criticize a long list of perceived adversaries, from the news media to members of his own administration, elected officials in both political parties, and foreign heads of state. The more than 26,000 tweets he sent as president provided an unvarnished real-time account of his thinking on a broad spectrum of issues, and equally proved so provocative that Twitter permanently banned him from his platform in his final days in office. Trump became the first president ever to be impeached twice, the second time for inciting an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol during the certification of the election he lost, and the nation's first chief executive in more than 150 years to refuse to attend his successor's inauguration. This is a wild sentence, and I didn't know about any of this during the time. This article goes on to list everything, his lowest approval rating and all this horrible stuff. It's really bad. It's really, really bad how much stuff happened during his election and how evil it was and how wicked it was. And if you want this article, it will be linked in the top comment to make it easier for you to read if you want to do your own reading about the subject going further. But that's the nonsense that happened during his thing. And I didn't know anything about this. I generally had no clue because I wasn't smart at all. And I'm an average person, a regular person who just was easily convinced by pretty words. I just allowed things to happen, and I just convinced other people that they were stupid and they were crazy. And you're not going to convince anybody that is a MAGA person now to not listen to Trump, right? So I'm going to do two things here. I'm going to explain my thought process about everything to make it easier for you, and then I'm going to just read the rest of the article. Seems to be fair. I just realized that nobody's probably going to read the article because it's probably a regular person watching this and they don't want to read the article, and they probably clicked on the video and they was like, I don't want to read, and they're probably doing other things. So I'm going to read the article in full after I give my thoughts. So this is my entire thing. So as a former black MAGA supporter, as a super guy that really wanted Trump to be the greatest thing that ever happened to America since sliced bread and the American dream in itself, I'm going to tell you something very important about why you're losing against MAGA and why you feel like you're never going to get anywhere. Because you keep trying to defeat MAGA with, I don't know, a compilation video, a thread, a gotcha, a fact check with these red circles and arrows and all this dramatic lighting. You're not going to do that. Are you trying to win custody of America in a YouTube commentary court case? That's not going to happen. It does not work. You're treating the movement like it's a spreadsheet problem instead of an emotional identity people built over decades of exhaustion, humiliation, pride, religion, family history, labor, and a desperate desire to believe something and suffering meant something. You cannot actually somebody out of a worldview they welded together during 40 years of bills, layoffs, divorces, gas station coffee at 5 in the morning, and hearing somebody finally say, "You matter," in a language they understood. White people are being centered first? This is amazing. And because I'm stupid and poor and dumb, I had assumed he was talking about me because I saw that black people clip and assumed that he was talking about me. And the language is not precise or academic or source. It's very basic, encompassing traditional TV language of, I see you, you are not crazy, they are lying to you, I am on your side. That is it. If you want the mindset behind somebody in MAGA, that's it. Debating only works when both people secretly arrive hoping they might be changed. That's debating. Most MAGA people are not entering the room with that mindset. To MAGA people, like I was, there is nothing to fix, nothing to apologize for, nothing to rethink. They believe they are already seeing the truth while everybody else is manipulated, brainwashed, weak, soft, fake, elitists, or corrupted by institutions that they stopped trusting years ago. And I want you to really think about that for a moment. We are told all the time, there's a thing of coastal elites, there's all these things, and Trump comes out of nowhere and says, there are. Actually, I'm in office and I can tell you that everybody is weak and I'm never wrong, and everybody around me is wrong, and they're fake, they're elitist, and I'm better. Trust is the key. The trust is gone. The trust left before Trump arrived, right? They was like, they let a black person become president? This was crazy. Trump had the perfect setup for everything for a bunch of racists to choose Trump, right? Because Trump's not stupid. Trump's not dumb. And I know you're going to say he is, but he's not. He's not in it. He knows how to manipulate. That's smart to me. That's it. That's the entire thing. Trump popped up and said, you saw that black guy that elected you in office? He said white people aren't as important as you guys. Isn't that bad? And Trump did not kill trust in institutions. The institutions killed trust in themselves through decades of lying about serving sizes and putting microplastics in the food and lead and all this stuff. They're failing and protecting themselves from while ordinary people got left behind. Trump was the ordinary people president. Trump walked into the crater created and said, I know, I'm angry too. I'm pissed. And that sentence he said, I didn't care about policy or anything of that. I didn't care. I didn't care. And you show these people evidence. You know what they see? Propaganda. Propaganda. You want to show me evidence? That's ridiculous. You edited that. That's AI. That's ridiculous. That's stupid. Why would you do that? You show them outrage and they see panic from enemies. You show them contradictions and they say, well, you know, I beat my daughter, but I love her still. And I beat my son, but I love him. And everybody's got little flaws. Trump survives contradictions in the same way Godzilla survives a nuke. It's the refusal to bend. That's it. And it becomes so magnetic to people who spent their lives being punished for weakness. That's it. That's where I was. I was on all these things. I had just beaten cancer. I had gotten charged a crazy hospital bill. And Trump said he could fix all that. I think this is where all the liberals and online political addicts keep missing when they prepare this 12 tweet thread and all this stuff. That you think all these words are going to convince me, but you need to be more emotional. I'm not going to understand your emotions. Appeal to my emotions. That's it. A man who never admits fault becomes larger than life to people who grew up in households where admitting fault got you mocked, screamed at, fired, hit, abandoned, or spiritually crushed. Think of that for a second. That's what happened. Trump says outrageous things and keeps moving forward anyway. That's so powerful. And everybody who's felt powerless and all this stuff, it's so much armor. But now the cracks are showing, right? Reality eventually arrives at the front door all the time. People are staring at grocery prices, gas prices, rent, insurance, the cost of eggs. That's what really did it for them, the cost of eggs. Somehow becoming a national horror movie monster lurking in every refrigerator. People are exhausted and scared and trying to survive while being told everything is incredible and historic and beautiful and that this suffering is somehow patriotic. The just wait rhetoric. You know what's crazy? It worked for a while. It did work for a while. Because a lot of humans, a lot of people, especially on the right, a lot of MAGA people, are unbelievably good at surviving tomorrow on the promise of someday. The rapture will happen. I'm going to wait for the good thing. You got to have a 401k build, gradual gratuity. It's going to get better. Trump understands that language deeply because it mirrors the upbringing a lot of his base had. You struggle now, so later becomes better. You endure now because prosperity comes later. You work through pain because complaining is weakness. There's that emotional framework. Many Americans were raised inside of this from childhood, right? That's the whole emotional framework. So when Trump says the country has to go through hardship before greatness returns, that's familiar. His father is working overtime. His mother is stretching dinner ingredients for 3 nights. It sounds like factory towns convincing themselves next year will finally save them. And that familiarity is so powerful, that emotional trap. You have survived hard times before. You can survive this. The reward is coming. Do not give up now. That's why gas is so much right now. He's playing the long con because he understands the system better than dumb old me. I don't know anything about business, but gas is expensive right now because, it gets better later, right? He got gas down to $1. I'm sure you can get it down to $1 again. He got it down that way during COVID. Remember, the reward is always next year. Right? Next year became another next year. Over and over again. In this war we're in right now with Iran and all this stuff, it's insane. And I just hate when people think that you guys think politics is academic. You're stupid. I mean this with my whole chest. You are dumb. You have no clue how politics works for the average person. You may understand it fundamentally. You may understand political theory. Hell, you may be better at understanding bigger words like filibuster than me. You got it. I'm here for you, right? You can say all these words with me, but you got to understand something really important. I'm an idiot, right? I want you to really understand what I'm saying to you right now. I'm a dumbass, right? I think emotionally, and a lot of people think spiritually, same as me. A fact sheet with all these bullet points does not overpower identity. A debate victory compilation does not erase resentment. I want to show you a video I saw on Twitter. It's so funny because they think they won because they proved a point correctly. That's not true. That's not how it works. I'm going to show you something.
I don't think any men should be in any women's restrooms, dressing rooms, or any women's sports.
Okay. What do you think should happen to a man that intentionally walked into a private woman's dressing room to look at them while they're naked?
I think they should be arrested.
They should be arrested? I would argue that they should be thrown in jail for the rest of their life. I just don't really think that they're too beneficial to society.
I agree.
Are you a Trump supporter?
I am.
Here's a clip of Donald Trump boasting about walking into a private woman's dressing room to look at the naked people inside.
We say hello with the vagina. What you could also say is the owner of...
Well, and everybody plays stuff and they can make it seem like it's something different.
Listen to it.
I'll tell you the funniest
It's not AI.
Because it came out in 2005.
Well, that was 20 years ago. People change all the time. That was 20 years ago.
But now you're saying,
we got to go to dinner right now.
But you're saying that because it happened 20 years ago, you're okay with him. But you just said if it was anybody but Trump, they should be thrown in jail for the rest of their life.
Anybody but Trump.
Okay.
But they shouldn't be.
But do you still support Trump?
He's never. I still do.
Okay. Do you want to listen to him admitting to it, or do you got to go?
I don't. Oh, I got to get this.
Okay. All right.
All the comments on that video are, "Oh, she's so stupid. She doesn't understand. She contradicted herself. She's a hypocrite." No shit. No dip. Do you think insulting a person like that is going to get them to be on your side? On a realistic note, do you think it's going to work by proving to them that they're dumb? That's not going to happen. They know they're dumb. Or they don't know they're dumb. The average person is that woman. I want to point that out, right? The average person, the person fixing your car, the person that is actually running that small business, the person doing that, not your echo chamber or friend groups, the average American in all those rural areas. You ever drive through a Midwest area, you see all those open fields, or you ever drive on a highway, you see all that open land, and you might see a barn in the distance. Those people aren't online arguing like you. Those exact people aren't doing that. So you're saying these people are dumb? No shit. Obviously, we get it. You know that, right? You understand that they know they're dumb. They understand that you're not gonna win by debating them into the ground. They're not there to debate. You have to show them something deeply emotional. You have to do that. And the only thing that really they understand is now that everything is bad now. A streamer yelling, "I destroyed them with facts," is stupid. You can't do it. That's dumb, right? People support politicians for emotional reasons first, and then intellectual reasons come later, because humans are not computers, right? We're not doing that. Most people reverse engineer logic around whenever it gives them meaning. It's projection, a tribe, certainty, dignity, and then the logic comes after every time you make a decision. You may not believe you do this, but you do. You are emotional first, and then you use logic to justify it. I'll give you a fun example. Vanilla ice cream. If you like vanilla ice cream the most, it's your favorite. You know what you're going to say? Well, vanilla ice cream is really good because X, Y, and Z. And that is an emotional answer because it's a completely subjective opinion. Literally every opinion you have is wildly subjective based on around your upbringing. That's it. There's barely any objective reality outside of like science and math, right? That's like pretty much it. Everything else is completely subjective based on contextual matters behind how people think it is. You could say this is a definitive fact. Not if it's not science or math, man. I really don't know what to tell you. And even that can be debated into the ground. Like Terrence Howard said 2 + 2 = 5. And that was the whole thing that was going on there. There is always, everybody is emotional when it comes to all this stuff. And you know what's crazy about the Terrence Howard thing? People believed that Terrence Howard was right about 2 + 2 = 5. People were correct about that. He said, no, I don't actually mean 2 + 2 = 5. I think that it's a metaphor for how we shouldn't trust our institutions, right? Here goes the thing, right? You're gonna go to these right-wing influencers, and if you go to any YouTube channel that's a right-wing, go to any of them right now. Do your best. Whether it's Ben Shapiro racking in $58,000 a month, or it's the Quarter racking in $34,000 a month. Hell, if it's even Think Before You Sleep getting $11K, this isn't including brand deals. All these people are running on the grift. And nowadays, they're talking about woke stuff. Woke people make everything ugly. Oh, this is bad. This is stuff. India, women's self-help, scammer, all this stuff. It doesn't matter. They don't care because they're getting money. You can't convince the influencers that they're wrong. So debating them does nothing. Tectone is innocent. All this stuff is crazy. All this, they don't care. They really, really, really don't care. If I were to click on any of those, I could click one at random. I don't even care what I'm gonna just click this one. All right, I'm gonna just click this video. All right, I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna see the dislike to like ratio is 60K likes, 1K likes, and then boom, and saying that murder is bad and crime should be punished are political positions. But we have no idea why he stabbed her. He told you. He said I got that white girl. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what video it is. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what. If they're insulting the left, they're gonna get all the people on the stage, and these people are gonna keep amplifying the voice over and over again. I could do this with any video ever. I'm on the right. It doesn't matter. These echo chambers are built for tough because Ford is an American company. That's really all that's gonna happen. Their ecosystem rewards confidence, aggression, persistence, unwavering certainty. They're not going to admit faults. That would collapse the character. That would destroy the brand, the myth. And myths are wildly profitable, right? The second somebody built around strength says I was wrong, you shouldn't have done that. That's betrayal. How could you say that? How could you be wrong? You got the woke line virus got you. Only people on the left admit they're wrong. That's disgusting. Defiance does not look back. Defiance does not second guess. Defiance doubles down. Doubling down feels better than admitting that you might have been misled, because doubling down preserves the tribe, and the tribe is family. America has always sit in this bizarre slow motion collision to me. People are hurting more while simultaneously being told victory is right around the corner if they just endure a little longer. And that's so believable for so many people, because hope mixed with pride can carry human things through unbelievable suffering. The history of America is full of people who endured horrible conditions on the promise of a better future. The future arrived for some, it did not arrive for others. The ones it did arrive for, I said that wrong. The ones it did not arrive for kept believing anyway, because the alternative was facing the possibility that their labor, their loyalty, and their suffering meant nothing, right? And that possibility is wildly unbearable. You telling me that all this suffering was nothing? So they keep believing. And the belief is not about Trump. I think the belief is about themselves, right? I think Trump is just a container for a hope that they cannot afford to lose. That's really how a lot of people that are MAGA and were MAGA really does things. Reality eventually always speaks louder than slogans. Those bills are going to interrupt ideology immediately. And as soon as you see that empty wallet, your mythology gets destroyed. People can ignore critics for years, but it gets harder to ignore the gas pump staring directly into your soul. That's bad. When that moment hits hard enough, some people will wake up, and it's not because they lost an argument online, not because someone fact-checked them with a source that they will never read. It's because life itself cornered them into asking questions they spent years avoiding. That's what it is. And people say, well, did I waste my loyalty? Was I wrong about the person I trusted? What does it mean if I was wrong? Those questions can break a person. And you may not want to believe this. You may not want to say this about yourself. If you're deeply MAGA, you may not want to believe this, but you're prideful. You're arrogant. And I'm prideful. And I'm arrogant. I'm a YouTuber, obviously. I'm prideful and arrogant. But that's what it is. These compilations of Trump being wrong, they're not going to reach people. The threads will not reach them. The gotchas will not reach them. What reaches them is the same thing that reached them before. Feeling seen. Feeling heard. Feeling like someone understands why they are angry without calling them stupid first. I think that's the part the left keeps forgetting, is that you can't insult somebody into agreeing with you. You can't do that. Whenever somebody tried to convince me to not be MAGA, right, they kept calling me deplorable. And then they act surprised when I don't want to join your coalition. You cannot mock my pain and wonder why I'm not going to listen to your solutions. That doesn't make any sense. The solutions do not matter if you already told them that their suffering is their fault, right? Like, and this is going to sound crazy and insane. Every time you tell a white person it's their fault, if they don't immediately experience white guilt, they're going to get resentful towards you. That's it. It's going to fester, and they're going to get fatigued with being told that they're the problem because they don't think they're the problem. That's it. That's the entire thing. And I know you're going to say, we don't need their vote. We don't need their help. You do. You do, because every time you fight across the aisle, you don't see up. Right? You don't look up every time you look across the aisle. That's a big issue. The way out is not all these compilations or threads. I need you to understand that politics is not math or science. Politics is the story people tell themselves about who they are and who the enemy is and why their suffering matters. Change the story. You cannot change the story by yelling. You can only change the story by listening. And listening is boring and slow as fuck. Listening does not go viral. Listening also works when nothing else does. The question is whether people want to win or whether they want to feel right. Right? That's what it is. Feeling right is faster. Winning takes longer. And definitely the clock is ticking. Anyways, I'm going to read the rest of this article real fast because I know a lot of people aren't going to read the article, and I think it's very important. So here goes all the bad things Trump did during his 2021 election. And I'll make another video later about how bad this presidency is right now. Trump's policy record included major changes at home and abroad. He achieved a long string of long-sought conservative victories domestically, including the biggest corporate tax cut on record, the elimination of scores of environmental regulations, and a reshaping of federal judiciary. In the international arena, he imposed tough new immigration restrictions, withdrew from several multilateral agreements, forged closer ties with Israel, and launched a tit-for-tat trade dispute with China. As part of wider efforts to address what he saw as glaring imbalances in America's economic relationship with other countries. People thought this was amazing. Many questions about Trump's legacy and his role in this nation's political future will take time to answer, but some takeaways from his presidency are already clear from Pew Research's Center's studies in recent years. In this essay, we take a closer look at the key social shifts that accelerated and emerged for the first time during the tenure of the 45th president. Trump's status as a political outsider, his outspoken nature, and his willingness to upend past customs and expectations of presidential behavior made a constant focus of public attention, as well as a source of deep partisan divisions. Even before he took office, Trump divided Republicans and Democrats more than any incoming chief executive in the prior 3 decades. The gap only grew more pronounced after he became president. An average of 86% of Republicans approved of Trump's handling of the job over the course of his tenure, compared with an average of 6% Democrats, the widest partisan gap in approval for any president in the modern era of polling. Trump's overall approval rating never exceeded 50% and fell to a low of just 29% in his final weeks in office, shortly after a mob of supporters attacked the Capitol, which was insane. Republicans and Democrats weren't just divided over Trump's handling of the job, they also interpreted many aspects of his character and personality in fundamentally opposite ways. In a 2019 survey, at least 3/4 of Republicans said the president's words sometimes or more often made them feel hopeful, entertained, informed, happy, and proud. Even larger shares of Democrats said his words sometimes or often made them feel concerned, exhausted, angry, insulted, or confused. He was trolling people. People love when Trump trolls. The strong reactions that Trump provoked appeared in highly personal context too. In a 2019 survey, 71% of Democrats who were single and looking for a relationship said they would definitely or probably not consider being in a committed relationship with someone who had voted for Trump in 2016. That far exceeded the 47% of single and looking Republicans who said they would not consider being in a serious relationship with a Hillary Clinton voter. Very interesting. Many Americans opted not to talk about Trump's politics at all. In 2019, almost half of all U.S. adults, 44%, said they wouldn't feel comfortable talking about Trump with someone they didn't know well. A similar share, 45%, said later that year they had stopped talking politics with someone because of something that person had said. In addition to the intense divisions that emerged over Trump personally, his tenure saw a further widening of the gulf between Republicans and Democrats over core political values and issues, including in areas that weren't especially partisan before his arrival. In 1994, when Pew Research Center began asking Americans a series of 10 values questions on subjects including the role of government, environmental protection, and national security, the average gap between Republicans and Democrats was 15 percentage points. By 2017, the first year of Trump's presidency, the average partisan gap with those same questions had more than doubled to 36 points, the result of a steady decades-long increase in polarization. On some issues, there were bigger changes in thinking among Democrats than among Republicans during Trump's presidency. That was especially the case on topics such as race and gender, which gained new attention amid the Black Lives Matter and Me Too movements. In a 2020 survey that followed months of racial justice protests in the U.S., for instance, 70% of Democrats said it is a lot more difficult to be a black person than be a white person in the U.S. today, up from 50% who said the same thing just 4 years earlier. Republican attitudes on the same question changed little during that span, with only a small share agreeing with the Democratic view. And I would like to say it is a little bit more difficult to be a black person in America. Much more difficult to be a black woman. Being a black woman is the most difficult thing of all time. You hate to see it. On other issues, attitudes changed more among Republicans than other Democrats. One notable example related to views of higher education between 2015 and 2017. The shares of Republicans who said colleagues in universities were having a negative effect on the way things were going in the U.S. rose from 37% to 58%, even as around 7 in 10 Democrats continue to say these institutions were having a positive effect. A dearth of shared facts and information. One of the few things that Republicans and Democrats could agree on during Trump's tenure is that he didn't share the same set of facts. In a 2019 survey, around 3/4 of Americans, 70%, said most Republicans and Democratic voters disagreed not just over political plans and policies, but over basic facts. Much of the disconnect between the parties involved news media, which Trump routinely disparages fake news, and the enemy of the people. Republicans in particular expressed widespread and growing distrust of the press. In a 2019 survey, Republicans voiced more distrust than trust in 20 of the 30 specific news outlets they were asked about. Even as Democrats expressed more trust than distrust in 22 of those same outlets, Republicans overwhelmingly turned to and trusted one outlet included in the study, Fox News. Even as Democrats used and expressed trust in wider range of sources, the study concluded that the two sides placed in their trust two nearly inverse media environments. Some of the media organizations Trump criticized more vocally saw the biggest increases in GOP distrust over time. The share of Republicans who said they distrusted CNN rose from 33% in a 2014 survey to 58% by 2019. The proportion of Republicans who said they distrusted the Washington Post and the New York Times rose to 17% respectively during that span. In addition to their criticisms of specific news outlets, Republicans also questioned the broader motives of the media in surveys fielded over the course of 2018 and 2019. Republicans were far less likely than Democrats to say that journalists act in the best interest of the public, have high ethical standards, prevent political leaders from doing things they shouldn't, and deal fairly with all sides. Trump's staunchest GOP supporters often had the most negative views. Republicans who strongly approved of Trump, for example, were much more likely than those who only somewhat approved or disapproved of him to say journalists have very low ethical standards. That was the entire thing there. Apart from the growing partisan polarization over the news media, Trump's time in office also saw the emergence of misinformation as a concerning new reality for many Americans. Half of U.S. adults said in 2019 that made-up news and information was a very big problem in the country, exceeding the shares who said the same thing about racism, illegal immigration, terrorism, and sexism. Around 2/3 said made-up news and information had a big impact on the public confidence in the government, and 68% in total, while half or more said it had a major effect on Americans' confidence in each other, 54%, and political leaders' ability to get work done, that was 51%. Misinformation played a huge role in the birth of the coronavirus pandemic and the 2020 presidential election. Almost 2/3 of U.S. adults, 64%, said in April 2020 that they had seen at least some made-up news or information about the pandemic, with around half or 9% saying that kind of information had caused a great deal of confusion over the basic facts of the outbreak. In a survey in mid-2020, 6 in 10 adults said made-up news and information had played a major role in the jump in the just concluded election. So this all is very important to how Trump just had his entire empire run. Conspiracy theories were an especially salient form of misinformation during Trump's tenure, in many cases amplified by the president himself. For example, nearly half Americans, 47%, said in September 2020 that they had heard or read a lot or little about the collection of conspiracy theories known as QAnon, up from 23% earlier this year. Most of those aware of QAnon said Trump seemed to support the theory's promoters. Trump frequently made disproven or questionable claims as president. News and fact-checking organization documented thousands of his false statements over 4 years on subjects ranging from the coronavirus to the economy, perhaps none of more consequential than his repeated assertion of widespread fraud in the 2020 election he lost to Democrat Joe Biden. Even after courts around the country have rejected the claim and all 50 states has certified the results, Trump continued to say he had won a landslide victory. The false claim gained widespread currency among his voters in January 2021. Three-quarters of Trump supporters incorrectly said he was definitely or probably the rightful winner of the election. And then there's concerns over the American democracy. Throughout his tenure, Donald Trump questioned the legitimacy of democratic institutions, from the free press to the federal judiciary and the electoral process in itself. In surveys conducted between 2016 and 2019, more than half Americans said Trump had little or no respect to the nation's democratic institutions and traditions, though these views too split sharply along partisan lines. The 2020 election brought concerns about democracy into much starker relief. Even before the election, Trump had cast doubt on the security of mail-in voting and refused to commit to a peaceful transfer of power in the event that he had lost. When he did lose, he refused to publicly concede defeat. His campaigns and allies filed dozens of unsuccessful lawsuits to challenge the results, and Trump personally pressured state government officials to retroactively tilt the outcome in his favor. The weeks of legal and political challenges culminated on January 6, 2021, when Trump addressed a crowd of supporters at a rally outside the White House, and again falsely claimed the election had been stolen. With Congress meeting the same day to certify Biden's win, Trump supporters stormed the Capitol in an attack that left 5 people dead and forced lawmakers to be evacuated until order could be restored and a certification could be completed. The House of Representatives impeached Trump a week later on the charge of inciting the violence, with 10 Republicans joining 222 Democrats' support in the decision. This was insane. The riot was absolutely just bedlam. It was outstandingly bad. Most Americans place at least some of the blame on Trump for the riot in the Capitol, including 52% who said he bore a lot of responsibility for it. Again, however, partisan views differed wildly. 80% of Democrats said Trump bore a lot of responsibility, compared with 18% of Republicans. Even as he repeatedly cast doubt on the Democratic powers, Trump proved to be an enormously galvanizing figure at the polls. Nearly 160 million Americans voted in 2020, the highest estimated turnout rate among eligible voters in 120 years. Hell, I voted. I never voted. That's crazy. Considering it was my first year, I probably wasn't going to vote if he wasn't as entertaining. Despite widespread changes in voting procedurals brought on by the pandemic, Biden received more than 81 million votes and Trump received more than 74 million, the highest and second highest total in U.S. history turnout in the 2018 midterm election. The first after Trump took office also set a modern day record. This was insane. Pew Research Center survey cataloged the high stakes that voters perceived, particularly in the run-up to the 2020 election. Just before the election, around 9 and 10 Trump and Biden supporters said there would be lasting harm to the nation if the other candidate won, and around 8 and 10 in each group said they disagree with the other side, just not on political priorities, but on core American values and goals. Earlier in the year, 80% of registered Americans voters said it really mattered who won the election, the highest percentage for any presidential election in at least 2 decades. Trump himself was a clear motivating factor for both sides. 71% of Trump voters said before the election the choice was more of a vote for the president than against Biden, while 60% of voters said their choice was more of a vote against Trump than his opponent. Very emotional people. Nobody cares about the policies or anything of that variety. It's just very emotional. Racial tensions were at a constant undercurrent during Trump's presidency, often intensified by the public statements he made in response to high-profile incidents. The death of George Floyd in particular brought race to the surface in a way that few other incidents have. The videotaped killing of an unarmed 46-year-old black man by a white police officer in Minneapolis was among several police killings that sparked national and international protests in 2020 and led to the outpouring of public support for the Black Lives Matter movement, including from corporations, universities, and other institutions. In a survey shortly after Floyd's death in May, 2/3 of U.S. adults, including majorities across all major racial and ethnic groups, voiced support for the movement, and the use of the Black Lives Matter hashtag surged to a record high on Twitter. Yes, this hashtag matters so much, it's wildly important. Attitudes began to change as the protests wore on and sometimes turned violent, drawing sharp condemnation from Trump. By September, support for the Black Lives Matter movement has slipped to 55%, largely due to the increases among white adults, and many Americans question whether the nation's renewed focus on race would lead to changes to address racial inequality or improve the lives of black people. Race-related tensions erupted into public view earlier in Trump's tenure too. In 2019, white nationalists rallied in Charlottesville, Virginia to protest the removal of the Confederate statue amid a broader push to eliminate such memorials from public spaces across the country. The rally led to violent clashes in the city streets and the death of a 32-year-old woman when a white nationalist deliberately drove a car to a crowd of people. Tensions also arose in the National Football League as some players protested racial injustices in the U.S. by kneeling during the national anthem. The display prompted a backlash indeed, among some who saw it as disrespectful to the American flag. In all of these controversies and others, Trump weighed in from the White House, but typically not in the way that most Americans saw as helpful. In the summer 2020 survey, for example, 6 in 10 U.S. adults said Trump had delivered the wrong message in response to the protests over Floyd's killing. That included around 4 in 10 adults who said Trump had delivered the completely wrong message. More broadly, Americans viewed Trump's impact on racial relations as far more negative than positive. In an earlier 2019 poll, 56% said Trump had made race relations issues worse since taking office, compared with a 50% who said he had made progress towards improving relations. In the same survey, around 2/3 of adults, 67%, said it had become more common for people in the U.S. to express racist or racially insensitive views since his election. The public also perceived Trump as too close with white nationalist groups. In 2019, a majority of adults, 57%, said he had done too little to distance himself from these groups, while 29% said he had done about the right amount, and 7% said he had done too much. These opinions were nearly the same as in December 2016, before he took office. While Americans overall gave Trump much more negative than positive remarks from his handling of race relations, there were consistent divisions among racial, ethnic, and partisan lines. Black, Hispanic, and Asian adults were often more critical of Trump's impact on race relations than white adults, as were Democrats when compared with Republicans. For example, while an overwhelming majority of Democrats, 83%, said in 2019 that Trump had done too little to distance from white national groups, a majority of Republicans, 56%, said he had done just the right amount. White Republicans in particular rejected the idea of widespread structural racism in the U.S. and saw too much emphasis on race. In September 2020, around 8 in 10 white Republicans said the bigger problem was people seeing racial discrimination where it doesn't exist, rather than people not seeing discrimination where it really does exist. The opinions of white Democrats on the same question were nearly the reverse. Every presidency is shaped by outside events. That's just a fact. And Trump will undoubtedly be remembered for the enormous toll the coronavirus pandemic took on the nation's public health and economy. More than 400,000 Americans died from COVID-19 between the beginning of the pandemic and when Trump left office, with fatality counts sometimes exceeding 4,000 people per day, a toll more severe than the overall toll of the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, or the bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Trump himself contracted coronavirus in the home stretch of his campaign for re-election, as did dozens of White House and campaign staff and members of their family. The far-reaching public health effects of the virus were reflected in a survey in November 2020, when more than half of the U.S. adults, 54%, that they personally knew someone who had been hospitalized or died due to COVID-19. The shares were even higher among Black, 71%, and Hispanic adults. At the same time, the pandemic had a disastrous effect on the economy. Trump and Barack Obama together have presided over the longest economic expansion in American history, with the U.S. unemployment rate at a 50-year low of 3.5% as recently as February 2020 by April 2020, with businesses around the country closing their doors to prevent the spread of the virus. Unemployment has soared to a post-World War II high of 14.8, even after considerable employment gains later in the year. Trump was the first modern president to lead the White House with fewer jobs in the U.S. than when he took office, which is insane. The economic consequences of the virus, like its public health repercussions, hit some Americans harder than others. Many upper income workers were able to continue doing their jobs remotely during the outbreak, even as lower income workers suffered widespread losses and pay cuts. The remarkable resiliency of the U.S. stock market was a rare bright spot during the downturn, but one that had its own implications for economic inequality. Going into the outbreak, upper income adults were far more likely than lower income adults to be invested in the stock market. And to this day, I think I'm not invested in the stock market at all, which is insane. And the only reason I even got a little bit of stocks is because Trump gave a stimulus check and I was getting paid by the government because I was getting like weekly checks from my job that had laid me off. The pandemic clearly underscored and exacerbated Americans' partisan decisions. Democrats were consistently much more likely than Republicans to see the virus as a major threat to public health, while Republicans were far more likely than Democrats to see it as exaggerated or overblown. The two sides disagreed on public health strategies ranging from mask wearing to contact tracing. Everything was bad. The outbreak also had important consequences for Americans' image in the world. International views on the U.S. had already plummeted after Trump took office in 2017, but attitudes tended to be more negative amid a widespread perception that the U.S. had mishandled the initial outbreak. The share of people with a favorable opinion of the U.S. fell in 2020 to a record or near record lows in Canada, France, Germany, Japan, the United Kingdom, and other countries. Across all 13 nations surveyed, a median of just 15% of adults said the U.S. had done a good job responding to COVID-19, well below the median share who has said the same thing about their own country. The World Health Organization, or WHO, the European Union, and China. At a much more personal level, many Americans expected the coronavirus outbreak to have a lasting impact on them. And in August 2020 survey, 51% of U.S. adults said they expect their lives to remain changed in major ways even after the pandemic was over. And then this is basically a looking ahead section, and we get to see what is going on right now. That article was wildly important. It was important for a lot of reasons, and hopefully you stuck through to the end of the article and stuff of that variety. But now we are in the second year, I believe, of a Trump presidency, and it is significantly worse. And I will talk about that in another video. I just want to give my perspective. I don't know why I say perspection. It's not even a word. Perspection is not a word. I want to give my perspective on this entire thing as somebody that formerly voted for Trump and now thinks that he is a lunatic and a psychopath and a narcissist and the worst thing to happen to America ever. You were not going to convince me with facts. I had to see it for myself. I needed to be convinced by seeing it. And that is a big issue with a lot of people, is that they're prideful, they're arrogant, same as me. And it's not going to be some fact that changes them. It's going to be something that hits them at home. Thankfully, this war and the gas prices are destroying the economy and annihilating people in droves. So, yeah, I guess that's a good thing. Look, Holt is getting weaker. So, yeah. Anyways, thank you guys so much for checking out my content. I hope you have a lovely day or night wherever you're at. And I'm out. Peace. Bye.
I'm your Nick at night, be my Laurel, low. Ooh, happy to try what you need. Your world, I love to live in it. Ooh, I love the ride when you're free.